Thanks very much, Jeremy. I'm very pleased to be here. I think, there's a few lessons learned, but there's a lot of lessons that we are learning. So I think if I had chosen the title on this one, I would have probably caveated it like that. So to start with, why is MAPS important? So both Jeremy and Dr. Eichler mentioned this, but I think we can get very tangled up in the systems and the processes and the complexity of the healthcare ecosystem that we need to navigate to get new products to patients. So we need to keep in mind why we're doing this, and this is to deliver valuable or beneficial products to patients as fast as we can, and we think we can do it in some cases faster than we do today. This chart is a somewhat complicated way to depict that simple message. It's coming from the paper, actually, again, that Dr. Eichler referred to, and I would encourage any of you to read that one. But what it's showing is the concept of treatment window of opportunity for patients. So this is the fact that when patients are diagnosed, the disease will progress in many cases, sometimes faster, for example, in a metastatic cancer, and sometimes slower, for example, in a hypercholesterolemia kind of state. However, there comes a point where the patient is no longer treatable, or the patient loses the opportunity to benefit from a treatment. And every year, you have a new cohort of patients that go through that process. Now, clearly, by delivering a drug earlier, the opportunity for those patients is captured. Or conversely, if we wait until we have gathered more data, done a longer-term phase 3 study, whatever it may be, cohorts of patients will lose that opportunity to be treated. So for me, that's the starting point. And when we have all these discussions, we need to keep making sure that what we're doing actually does that. Now, next, in order to get the drugs to patients, no matter how they're developed, in fact, they need to go through a number of stages. And each stage, so first of all, it's the R&D stage. I just kind of have that together. There is a regulatory approval stage. There are a number of access and HTA assessment stages in different countries around the world. In many countries, then you have a kind of a local access stage where regions or hospitals individually are making a decision. Then the physicians who prescribe the drugs also need to agree to, with the premise of the product, and the patient needs to recognize that the product can deliver some value and accept to take it. Now, why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant for all drugs, but in the case of MAPS, we are saying we should try to push the envelope on how much data is enough. And so we need to convince each of these groups that there is enough data about this drug before it will actually reach the patients. And I mean, this chart is simply showing that the numbers of individual decision makers involved across that process increases very dramatically as you move through, which can create a communication challenge that we also need to keep in mind about how we are communicating the benefits and the risks of the drugs coming through the process. Next lesson, and this slide looks a bit messy, and it is. This is a very much in process, an attempt to show an in process. And I also think that we need to recognize the big elephant in the room, which is which is the value that these medicines bring. And we see this all the time at the moment. It's the number one issue. I think if we think about it specifically in the choice of, do we develop a product under a MAPS type of pathway, or do we develop that product under a traditional pathway, we can narrow some of the issues that we need to address, right? So I think what I would like to see is that the system delivers to this sort of proposed principle number one, right? So I would like, that companies are able to receive an equal reward in some way, whichever route they go down. There should be an agnostic level there. If not, or if the financial rewards are much higher under a traditional pathway, companies are rational. They're economically driven. They will be likely to take that pathway, and then we lose the opportunity. On the other hand, I think we need to think about principle number 2, and this is clearly from the other side of the coin, if you like. The payers, should have a certain expectation as well. And I'm not quite sure whether this principle is right. I actually think it's something we really should try to explore in the CSA exercise and elsewhere. I think it's a very difficult one. I don't think it has really been explored in a very collaborative or productive way so far. But we need to find a way to have that discussion. Now then, down here, there are some things that we see and that we do in different parts of the world that may give us some sort of direction of travel or some clues or some ideas that may help in some cases. I don't think any of them solve the solution, by the way. But so let's maybe start at the bottom. We've seen already in a couple of slides the idea of managed entry agreements being part of the solution. My experience of managed entry agreements is that they do have a role. It's pretty small. It's rather fragmented at the moment. There's a lot of challenge about setting them up. They aren't fast. They're complex. Nobody really likes them, I think. It's fair to say. But there is a fit. So if we can find a way to make them work much better, much more efficiently, using the new data sources that we have coming, that could work. Within that, it needs to be a genuine risk share, right? Which means at the bottom line that prices need to reflect the value. As the value changes, the prices go up or down. The idea of an innovation fund is something that exists in a few places. Scotland has one. The UK has the Cancer Drugs Fund, which, again, I think it could be part of the mix. So what this says is that certain products don't fit very well within the standard reimbursement and pricing processes that a country has. And so there's a sort of a ring-fenced pot of money that allows products to reach patients in a different way. Again, not saying that either of those models are perfect, but it could create an opportunity to open up opportunities for products to reach patients faster. There could be something that you could see around an agreement that says, here's a new product, we're not quite sure what the value is yet, but why not try it out in a number of patients, and we will look for a fixed payment over a period of time. And maybe there's also something that is a variation of the risk share, which says we recognize that there's high uncertainty now. That uncertainty will decrease. We need some sort of an interim approach that we can, again, ring fence so that it doesn't impact what happens later down the line, but it doesn't prevent the product from reaching a patient in the short term. Finally, from me, I want to just discuss some of the things that I've seen and heard in terms of myths around maps that may be emerging, and some of you may resonate with some of you. So first of all, I think there's a certain feeling that maps is only applicable in rare diseases. My view is that there are a number of aspects of rare disease R&D and process that make them well suited, and I've listed some up there, but actually many of those can apply in other diseases too, particularly when you look at stratification and personalization and so forth. Second myth, I think it's a myth, is that R&D investments will be lower. So in some cases, that probably will be the case, but I don't think we should automatically assume it to be the case for a number of reasons, right? So first of all, pre-approval, there may be less investment under MAPS than than under a traditional approach. However, much of that investment simply gets shifted post-approval. So the costs don't go down. Secondly, actually, we may need to bring forward some investments in terms of manufacturing as a reasonable example, where those investments would be made earlier under a MAPS process than under a traditional approach, and therefore the risks and the costs of failure actually could be higher in that case. For example, if we have to scale up a manufacturing plant in order to be ready earlier to provide a commercial scale of product. Third myth, linked really to those combination of the first two, is that we should expect prices to be lower. Well, I don't think we should. I think that's a bit of the elephant in the room, or maybe the key part of the elephant in the room on the last slide. It could be the case they will, in some cases. However, we can also say, under these approaches, we may find that we're showing a higher level of benefit in a smaller patient group. And as we know, in general, the economics of that would suggest that the prices may actually be higher. And I also think we should reflect on, as a society, are we willing to pay for patients to get access to these products earlier? Those patients who are inside that treatment window of opportunity, they would give a very clear answer, right? But as society, is that something that we do want to prioritize and do want to reward? The final myth, which has been touched on, and I think, I think we maybe it's not a myth, but so I think we see very good progress. So 58 assets or more that have been submitted into the pilot program. But I still hear some companies expressing concerns about doing so. So we don't know out of those 58 products, where have they come from? I suspect there are a number of companies, probably people sitting here, companies haven't actually submitted any products. GSK has submitted a few, and but not all the teams within GSK would have the same view on this. So the myth really is the sense of a risk or a concern about even entering into the discussion. So that was really what I wanted to say. Again, I hope that paints a picture. Some lessons I think we have learned already, many that we are hopefully in the process of learning, and quite a few that we need to make sure we absolutely do learn in the coming years through the CSA and other programs. Thanks.